Tom and Jane had been married for 26 years, a lifetime woven with shared experiences, dreams, and an unyielding bond that seemed unbreakable. Tom often reflected on their journey together, marveling at how they had grown from two young dreamers into a couple admired by their community. Their home was filled with laughter and warmth, a testament to the love they had built and nurtured over the decades. Tom had always been the steady rock of the family, working tirelessly to build a successful career in finance. His dedication and hard work paid off, allowing Jane to pursue her passions and spend quality time with their three children. Jane, with her radiant smile and boundless energy, was the heart of their home. She had a talent for making every moment special, from organizing elaborate family gatherings to volunteering at the local shelter. Their children, now grown, often spoke of the idyllic childhood they had. Family vacations, holidays, and simple everyday moments were cherished memories that Tom and Jane had carefully crafted. Their eldest, Michael, was a lawyer, following in his father's footsteps of dedication and hard work. Emily, the middle child, was an artist with a flair for the dramatic, often saying that her creativity was inspired by her mother's zest for life. Their youngest, Ryan, was finishing college, full of ambition and the promise of a bright future. From the outside looking in, Tom and Jane's life seemed perfect. They were the couple everyone envied, with their loving family, beautiful home, and successful careers. They attended social events together, often being the center of attention with their charming presence and easy rapport. Friends and neighbors would often comment on how lucky they were to have found each other, a sentiment that Tom wholeheartedly believed. Despite the challenges that life inevitably brought, Tom and Jane had always faced them together. They weathered financial storms, navigated the tumultuous teenage years of their children, and supported each other through personal and professional trials. Their bond was strong, fortified by years of mutual respect, love, and understanding. Tom took great pride in the life they had built. He often found himself reminiscing about the early days of their relationship, the excitement of their wedding day, and the joy of welcoming their children into the world. He was grateful for the life they had, and he couldn't imagine it any other way. To him, their marriage was a partnership, a testament to their shared commitment and unwavering support for each other. In those quiet moments of reflection, Tom felt a deep sense of contentment. Their life, filled with love, success, and happiness, was everything he had ever dreamed of. Little did he know that beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life, cracks were beginning to form, threatening to shatter the world he held so dear. Tom began to notice subtle changes in Jane's behavior that he couldn't quite put his finger on. At first, it was little things. She seemed more distracted, her mind wandering during their conversations. She no longer shared the small details of her day with the same enthusiasm, and her laughter, once so frequent and genuine, became rare and forced. Tom tried to brush off his concerns, attributing it to the inevitable ebb and flow of a long marriage. Yet deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Jane, who had always been the linchpin of their family, now seemed increasingly preoccupied with her thoughts. She spent more time on her phone, her face illuminated by the screen late into the night. When Tom asked what she was doing, her answers were vague and dismissive. "Just catching up with friends," she would say, but there was an edge to her tone that made him uneasy. Her involvement in family activities dwindled. Jane, who once reveled in organizing family dinners and outings, began to find excuses to avoid them. She claimed she was tired or had other commitments. Tom noticed that she started coming home later than usual, often with little explanation. When he questioned her about it, she would brush him off with a quick, "It's just work, Tom," and change the subject. At work, Jane's performance began to slip. Her colleagues, once full of praise for her dedication and creativity, started to notice her lack of focus. She missed deadlines, something that was unheard of for her. Tom overheard a conversation between Jane and her boss one evening, where she was being gently reprimanded for her declining productivity. Jane's response was curt and defensive, a stark contrast to her usually composed demeanor. The most troubling change for Tom was the emotional distance that seemed to grow between them. Jane had always been his confidant, the person he could turn to with his worries and triumphs. Now she seemed closed off, her responses to his attempts at intimacy mechanical and distant. Their conversations became superficial, devoid of the warmth and connection that had defined their relationship for so long. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Tom couldn't ignore the tension any longer. "Jane, is everything okay? You've seemed so distant lately," he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Jane looked up from her plate, her eyes momentarily flickering with an emotion Tom couldn't quite decipher. "I'm fine, Tom, just a lot on my mind," she replied, her voice flat and unconvincing. "Is it work? The kids? You can talk to me, you know that," Tom pressed gently. She sighed a long, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of her hidden burdens. "It's nothing you need to worry about," she said, and with that, the conversation was closed. As the weeks went by, the chasm between them only widened. Jane's detachment became more pronounced, and Tom found himself at a loss, grappling with the growing sense of unease. He missed the closeness they once shared, the simple joy of being together. He couldn't understand what had changed, but he knew that their once solid foundation was beginning to crack. Tom's heart ached with the fear that their perfect life might be unraveling, and he was powerless to stop it. One evening, Tom was sitting in his home office reviewing some documents for work. The house was unusually quiet, with Jane out for another one of her late nights and the kids scattered in their various pursuits. The ticking of the clock seemed louder in the silence, a rhythmic reminder of how much time he had spent pondering the growing distance between him and his wife. The phone rang, breaking the stillness. Tom glanced at the clock. It was almost 10 p.m. He picked up the phone, expecting to hear one of his children, or perhaps a late-night call from a client. Instead, a muffled voice on the other end startled him. "Tom?" The voice was distorted as if the caller was speaking through a handkerchief. "This is important. You need to listen." Tom felt a chill run down his spine. "Who is this?" he demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. "That's not important right now," the voice replied. "What's important is that you know the truth about Jane." Tom's grip tightened on the phone. "What are you talking about?" "Jane is not who you think she is," the caller continued. "She's been living a double life, Tom. She's not just working late or spending time with friends. There's someone else." Tom's mind raced. Could this be a prank? A cruel joke? "If this is some kind of sick joke, I'm not amused," he said, anger creeping into his voice. "I'm not joking, Tom," the voice insisted. "I've seen them together. I have proof. She's with another man. And it's been going on for a while. I thought you deserved to know." A wave of nausea washed over Tom. He tried to process the information, but it felt like his world was spinning out of control. "Why should I believe you?" he asked, desperation seeping through his words. "You don't have to believe me," the caller replied, "but you should watch her. See for yourself. I'm only telling you this because I think you deserve the truth. Don't confront her yet. Just observe." Before Tom could respond, the line went dead. He sat there, staring at the phone, his heart pounding in his chest. Could it be true? Could Jane be living a double life? The thought was unbearable, yet the caller's words echoed in his mind, refusing to be dismissed. Tom put down the phone and leaned back in his chair, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He remembered the subtle changes in Jane's behavior, the late nights, the secretive phone calls. The pieces of the puzzle began to form a picture he didn't want to see. That night, Tom lay awake, replaying the conversation over and over in his mind. He knew he couldn't ignore the warning, but the idea of spying on Jane made him feel sick. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. In the days that followed, Tom began to pay closer attention to Jane's actions. He noticed her increased secrecy, the way she guarded her phone, and her reluctance to answer questions about her whereabouts. The more he observed, the more he began to see the truth in the caller's words. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Jane, the woman he had loved and trusted for over 2 decades, was hiding something, and whatever it was, it threatened to destroy the life they had built together. Tom's mind was in turmoil as he navigated the days following the anonymous call. The idea of Jane leading a double life gnawed at him, leaving him restless and distracted. He tried to act normal, not wanting to raise her suspicions, but his thoughts were consumed by the need to uncover the truth. One evening, while Jane was out again, Tom decided to search their bedroom. He felt a pang of guilt as he opened her dresser drawers, rifling through her belongings. It felt invasive and wrong, but the urgency to find evidence overpowered his sense of propriety. As he moved to her closet, he noticed a small jewelry box tucked away in a corner. It was a box he didn't recognize, certainly not one of the ones he had given her over the years. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside were several pieces of exquisite jewelry, a diamond necklace, a sapphire bracelet, and a pair of emerald earrings. They were beautiful, undeniably expensive, and utterly unfamiliar. Tom's heart sank. He knew their finances well, and these were not items they could afford without significant planning. More importantly, he had never seen Jane wear them. His mind raced with questions. Who had given them to her? When did she receive them? And why had she hidden them? He continued his search, moving to her nightstand. Inside the top drawer, he found a small, elegant box. Opening it, he discovered a collection of luxury watches and a sleek new smartphone, another gift he had not given her. The realization hit him hard. These were not just random presents. They were tokens of affection from someone else. Digging deeper, Tom found receipts for high-end boutiques and restaurants, places they had never visited together. Each receipt was like a dagger, confirming his worst fears. Jane was not just receiving gifts. She was living a separate life filled with luxury and indulgence, a life that did not include him. He sat down on the edge of the bed, the weight of the discoveries pressing down on him. How long had this been going on? How had he missed the signs? The anonymous caller's words echoed in his mind, now validated by the physical evidence before him. Tom's emotions swung between anger, betrayal, and deep sadness. He felt foolish for not noticing the changes sooner and for trusting Jane implicitly. The woman he had loved for over 2 decades, the mother of his children, was betraying him in the most hurtful way possible. He carefully placed the items back where he found them, his mind reeling. This was no longer just a suspicion, it was a painful reality. He knew he had to confront Jane, but he also knew he needed to be strategic. Accusations without a plan could lead to more lies and deceit. As he closed the last drawer, Tom made a decision. He would gather more evidence and ensure that when he confronted Jane, there would be no room for denial. He would need to protect himself, his children, and the life they had built. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with pain, but Tom resolved to uncover the full extent of Jane's betrayal and hold her accountable for her actions. Tom's heart was heavy with the weight of his recent discoveries. The jewelry, the gifts, the receipts, all undeniable evidence of Jane's betrayal, but he still lacked the concrete proof he needed for a confrontation. The anonymous call had warned him to observe, and he was determined to uncover the full extent of her deceit. One evening, as he sat in his study pretending to work, he heard Jane's voice from the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and her tone was hushed, conspiratorial. His curiosity piqued. Tom moved silently closer, careful not to alert her to his presence. Through the crack in the door, he could hear her speaking on the phone, her voice soft but distinct. "I can't wait to see you again," Jane was saying, a flirtatious lilt in her voice that Tom hadn't heard in years. "Last night was amazing." Tom's stomach churned. He strained to hear the response, but the other voice was too muffled to make out. Jane laughed, a light, carefree sound that cut him to the core. It was a laugh she hadn't shared with him in what felt like an eternity. "I know," she continued, "but it's getting harder to keep this up. Tom is starting to get suspicious. He asked me about the late nights again." There was a pause as the person on the other end spoke. Jane's face twisted into a smirk. "Don't worry, he's so predictable, still clings to this fantasy of our perfect marriage. It's almost pathetic." Tom felt a sharp stab of pain. The words were like knives, each one slicing through the image of the life he thought they shared. He had always believed in their marriage, their love, and to hear Jane dismiss it so callously was almost unbearable. "I just have to keep playing the devoted wife a little longer," Jane said, her tone dripping with contempt. "Then we can finally be together, without all this sneaking around." Tom's breath caught in his throat. The reality of Jane's affair was devastating enough, but the sheer cruelty in her words, the way she mocked their life together, was almost too much to bear. He fought the urge to burst into the room and confront her then and there, knowing that he needed more than just his rage to face her. The conversation continued, with Jane making plans to meet her lover, talking about the expensive gifts he had given her, and laughing at how oblivious Tom had been. Each word was another nail in the coffin of their marriage, each laugh's a reminder of the deep betrayal. When the call finally ended, Jane sighed contentedly and began to get ready for bed. Tom slipped back into his study, his mind racing. The depth of Jane's deception was staggering. Not only was she unfaithful, but she also held their entire marriage in contempt, mocking the life they had built together. Tom knew that the time for observation was over. He had heard enough, seen enough. It was time to confront Jane with the truth and force her to face the consequences of her actions. The pain of her betrayal was still fresh, but now it was tempered with a resolve to protect himself and his children from further harm. The perfect life they had shared was shattered, and all that remained was the cold reality of Jane's lies. Tom was reeling from the devastating phone call he had overheard. Jane's callous disregard for their marriage and her elaborate deception was a painful blow, but he knew he needed more evidence to confront her decisively. He decided to take a calculated step, one that would allow him to gather information without drawing any immediate suspicion. In the quiet of his study, Tom created a fake social media profile under a fictitious name. He carefully crafted the profile to look like a genuine account, a new user with a few friends and minimal activity. Using this alias, he started to follow Jane's social media accounts, her posts, and her connections. It didn't take long for Tom to start noticing patterns. Jane had always been a prolific user of social media, posting pictures of her various outings and events. Under her real profile, she shared photos from recent high-end restaurants, luxury shops, and glamorous parties. But there was one person who appeared consistently in these photos, a wealthy-looking man named Richard Davis. Tom's heart raced as he saw the same face over and over. Richard was always by Jane's side, looking very much like the stereotypical high society figure. Tom dove deeper into the profile. He scrutinized photos of Jane and Richard together, analyzing their interactions. They were often photographed at exclusive events, private dinners, and even vacations. The images were filled with laughter, intimacy, and shared moments that Tom realized were part of a romantic relationship. The frequent tags and comments revealed a relationship that was both affectionate and deeply personal. The more Tom investigated, the clearer it became that Jane was heavily involved with Richard. Posts about their trips, the gifts Richard had given her, and their seemingly perfect moments together painted a picture of a life Tom had never been a part of. Jane had crafted a second life that was lavish and indulgent, and Richard was a central figure in it. One evening, Tom came across a post that made his stomach drop. Jane had shared a photo of herself with Richard at an exclusive resort, captioned with words that implied a deep emotional connection. "Feeling blessed with my favorite person. Here's to many more adventures together." Tom's heart sank as he read the comments. Friends and acquaintances praised the couple, congratulating them on their beautiful life. It was a stark contrast to the public facade of the happy family man Tom was. Behind the scenes, Jane had built a life with Richard that was everything Tom had been led to believe was solely theirs. With this new information, Tom felt a mix of betrayal and clarity. The evidence was undeniable. Jane's affair was not just an isolated incident, it was a full-blown relationship that she had hidden from him. He now had the proof he needed to confront her, but he knew that doing so would be a painful and complicated process. The life they had built together was under siege, and the truth was both a weapon and a burden he had to wield carefully. Tom logged out of the fake profile, feeling the weight of his discoveries. The final pieces of the puzzle had fallen into place, revealing the extent of Jane's betrayal. It was time to face the truth and prepare for the confrontation that would unravel the life they had known. The tension had been building in Tom for weeks. Armed with irrefutable evidence of Jane's affair and the emotional toll of her betrayal, he knew it was time to confront her. He couldn't continue living this lie, especially with their children and close friends oblivious to the truth. Tom decided to have a family holiday at home. This event was framed as a chance encounter, but the real purpose was to create an environment where Jane's deception would be exposed. He invited their closest friends and family, making sure the atmosphere was casual but intimate enough for the confrontation to be spectacular. During the evening, Tom played the role of attentive husband and host, mingling with the guests while keeping an eye on Jane. She was charming as always, chatting with everyone and enjoying the evening. Looking at her, Tom felt a pang of sadness, knowing that the facade was about to crumble. After dinner, Tom decided it was time. He gathered everyone in the living room under the guise of a special announcement. The room was filled with chatter and laughter, but Tom's heart was pounding in his chest. He took a deep breath and spoke, his voice even but firm. I have something important to share with all of you, Tom began. Jane and I have been married for 26 years. We lived a life together, raised wonderful children, and shared countless memories. The room fell silent, sensing the seriousness in Tom's tone. Jane looked up, her smile disappearing, as she sensed something was wrong. Recently, Tom continued, I discovered something that shattered everything I believed about our marriage. Jane had been involved in an affair for several months. A collective gasp filled the room. Jane's face paled and her eyes widened in shock. Tom's voice didn't waver as he continued, pulling out the evidence he had gathered, photos, receipts, and social media posts. He spread them out on the coffee table for all to see. I saw her with Richard Davies, Tom said, his voice full of quiet anger. She was living a double life and the truth came out in front of you all. Jane looked around, a mixture of shame and defiance on her face. Their children, sitting on the sofa, looked confused and hurt. The room was heavy with silence as Tom's words sank in. It's not just about us, Tom said to Jane. It's about family and friends who were cheated. I wanted everyone to know the truth because it's not fair to keep pretending. The reality of the situation hit Jane hard. A carefully constructed lie and secret life were now out in the open for those she had deceived. Her eyes met Tom's, and she saw the pain and betrayal reflected in her. When the initial shock wore off, Jane could no longer keep her composure. The weight of the confrontation and the truth she was hiding became too much. She looked back at the disappointed faces of their friends and family, then back at Tom. I need to say something, Jane began, her voice shaking. I've been hiding something from all of you, but it's time to face the truth. Tom's heart was pounding as he braced himself for whatever was about to happen. Jane took a deep breath, tears filling her eyes. Yes, she admitted, her voice breaking. I was unfaithful. I had been seeing Richard for months. I did it. I wanted excitement because I was sick of our life. The routine of our marriage had become stifling, and I was looking for something different. Her confession was met with silence. Jane continued, tears streaming down her face. I didn't do it to hurt you, Tom. I did it because I was looking for something that I couldn't find in our marriage. It was about thrills and escaping monotony. Tom stood there, feeling the sincerity of her words. The reasons she gave for her betrayal were a stark reflection of how detached she had become from their life together. Her need for excitement overshadowed the commitment and love they had built over the years. I'm so sorry, Jane said, her voice barely above a whisper. Now I understand how selfish I was. I never wanted it to end like this. The room was filled with an awkward silence as Jane's confession echoed throughout the space. Their friends and family exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of sympathy and condemnation. Emotions raged in Tom's head, anger, sadness, and disbelief. The life he thought he knew was shattered, and the person he loved and trusted betrayed him most profoundly. At that moment, Tom realized that their relationship had reached a breaking point. The illusion of their perfect marriage was revealed, and the way forward required reckoning with the choices they made and the consequences that followed. In the wake of Jane's confession, Tom's mind was a storm of emotions, betrayal, anger, and a sense of injustice. The life he had built with Jane was in ruins, and he was determined not to let her lover Richard Davis escape unscathed. The desire for revenge grew stronger each day, fueled by the humiliation and pain Tom felt. Tom began to meticulously plan his retribution. His first step was to gather detailed information about Richard Davis, Jane's lover. He knew that Richard's wealth and influence were significant, but he was determined to uncover any vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Using his newfound determination, Tom set up a series of covert operations. He started by creating a fake business profile that allowed him to access industry-specific forums and networks where Richard was active. This profile helped Tom gather insights into Richard's business dealings and professional connections. Tom's research led him to discover that Richard owned several high-end businesses, including a luxury car dealership and a chain of upscale restaurants. Tom pored over public records and business registrations, meticulously gathering data on Richard's ventures. He also tapped into online reviews, financial reports, and news articles to get a clearer picture of Richard's business practices. Tom's investigation paid off when he uncovered a hidden gem, a series of compromising documents linked to Richard's business dealings. He had discovered these documents through a combination of insider tips and meticulous digging into Richard's financial records. The documents were filled with evidence of unethical practices, including tax evasion, fraudulent transactions, and illegal dealings with suppliers. One evening, Tom received an anonymous tip from a contact in the industry, alerting him to a secure location where sensitive files related to Richard's businesses were stored. With a sense of purpose, Tom visited the location under the pretense of a business meeting. He managed to access the files and retrieve copies of the incriminating documents. The documents were explosive. They revealed not only financial discrepancies, but also illegal kickbacks and bribes that Richard had orchestrated. The gravity of the information was significant, enough to bring down Richard's entire business empire and tarnish his public image. With the documents in hand, Tom moved forward with his plan to destroy Richard's reputation. He knew that the best way to hit Richard where it hurt most was to expose his wrongdoing to the public. Tom meticulously prepared a dossier of the compromising documents, ensuring that every detail was clear and indisputable. Tom approached a trusted journalist who had previously covered high-profile scandals. He presented the journalist with the dossier, emphasizing the gravity of the evidence and the potential impact it could have on Richard's reputation. The journalist, recognizing the significance of the story, agreed to investigate further. The story broke in the press with a bang. Headlines screamed at Richard Davis's corruption and illegal activities, painting a picture of a wealthy businessman who had exploited and deceived his way to success. The exposé detailed the tax evasion, fraud, and unethical practices that Richard had been involved in, providing undeniable evidence of his wrongdoing. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Richard's businesses faced public outrage, legal scrutiny, and financial collapse. The media frenzy surrounding the scandal ruined his reputation and led to investigations by regulatory authorities. Tom watched with grim satisfaction as Richard's empire crumbled under the weight of the revelations. Tom's revenge was complete, but it came at a high cost. The satisfaction of seeing Richard brought low was tempered by the realization of the destruction it had caused. The pain of Jane's betrayal and the ensuing chaos had taken a toll on Tom, but he felt a sense of closure, knowing that justice, in his way, had been served. The repercussions of his actions would reverberate far beyond the confines of his own life, leaving a mark on all those involved. In the aftermath of exposing Richard Davis's misdeeds, Tom was still grappling with the emotional wreckage of his marriage. Despite the satisfaction of seeing Richard's empire collapse, Tom felt an emptiness that remained unresolved. He realized that Jane, who had been the source of his pain, was still living in relative comfort and ease, despite the turmoil she had caused. Determined to bring her world crashing down in a way that matched the scale of her betrayal, Tom devised a plan to hit her where it would hurt the most: her finances. Tom began by leveraging his professional connections to orchestrate a comprehensive financial attack. His background in business and finance gave him access to a network of influential contacts, including bankers, legal experts, and financial analysts. With their help, Tom set about executing a plan to freeze all of Jane's assets, rendering her financially powerless. The first step in Tom's strategy was to gather detailed information about Jane's financial holdings. He used his contacts to access records of her bank accounts, investment portfolios, and property assets. It became clear that Jane had amassed significant wealth over the years, thanks to a combination of her successful career and investments made with Richard's influence. Tom found evidence of multiple accounts, properties, and investments that had been accumulated in her name. With this information in hand, Tom moved quickly. He contacted a trusted financial advisor who had previously helped him with various business transactions. He shared the details of Jane's financial status and requested assistance in freezing her assets. The advisor, understanding the gravity of the situation, agreed to help under the condition that discretion was maintained. Tom's next step was to initiate legal proceedings. He filed a series of motions and petitions with the courts, alleging financial misconduct and requesting the freezing of Jane's assets. He provided evidence of her involvement with Richard and the dubious financial transactions that had come to light during the investigation. Tom argued that Jane's financial dealings were tainted by unethical and illegal activities, which warranted immediate action to prevent further asset accumulation or mismanagement. The court proceedings were swift. Tom's documentation and the legal arguments he presented were compelling, and the judge granted a temporary injunction to freeze Jane's assets pending further investigation. The ruling was a significant blow to Jane, who was now faced with the prospect of losing access to her financial resources. Tom's strategy extended beyond the courtroom. He contacted various financial institutions where Jane held accounts and investments, informing them of the court's order to freeze her assets. This included banks, investment firms, and real estate agencies. The institutions complied with the order, placing holds on her accounts and preventing any transactions. The impact was immediate and devastating. Jane found herself unable to access her bank accounts, pay bills, or manage her investments. The financial stability she had relied on was abruptly stripped away. She received notifications from her bank and other financial institutions about the freezing of her assets, and the reality of her situation hit her hard. The sudden loss of financial resources left Jane scrambling to understand what had happened. She faced mounting bills and an inability to maintain her lifestyle, which was now in jeopardy. The financial blow was not just a matter of inconvenience, it was a profound disruption to her way of life. The luxurious comforts and financial freedom she had enjoyed were now out of reach. As Tom watched the unfolding consequences, he felt a mix of vindication and sorrow. The satisfaction of seeing Jane's financial world crumble was tempered by the awareness that the impact of his actions would be felt deeply by those around her. Yet he felt that the magnitude of her betrayal warranted a response of equal weight. Tom's calculated financial assault had achieved its goal. Jane was left to confront the harsh reality of her actions, with her financial empire reduced to rubble. The financial blow had delivered a clear message. The consequences of her betrayal were far-reaching and devastating. With the devastation of Jane's financial situation complete, Tom turned his focus to the next crucial step in dismantling the remnants of their life together: legal action. The betrayal Jane had inflicted upon him was not just a personal wound, it was a fundamental breach of their life's commitments. Tom decided that a divorce was the only way to sever the ties completely and ensure that justice was served in all aspects of their shattered marriage. Tom retained a skilled divorce attorney who had a reputation for being both thorough and aggressive. He provided his lawyer with all the documentation and evidence related to Jane's infidelity and financial misconduct, including the compromising documents about her affair with Richard Davis and the evidence of her financial resources. The goal was clear. Tom wanted not only a divorce, but also full custody of their children and a division of assets that favored him. The legal proceedings were initiated with Tom filing for divorce on grounds of adultery and irreconcilable differences. The divorce petition included a request for sole custody of their children, citing Jane's instability and her inability to provide a secure environment due to her financial and personal turmoil. Tom emphasized his commitment to providing a stable and loving home for the children, contrasting his stability with Jane's current situation. In addition to custody, Tom sought an equitable division of their marital assets, but with a preference for a larger share. He argued that Jane's actions had led to a significant loss of trust and emotional distress, warranting a division that reflected the severity of her betrayal. The legal filings included demands for property, investments, and financial resources to be divided in Tom's favor. The court proceedings were intense, with Tom's attorney presenting a well-documented case that highlighted Jane's financial instability and her failings as a spouse. The legal team argued that Jane's actions had not only broken the marriage, but it also jeopardized the well-being of their children. They stressed that Tom's stability and responsible behavior made him the more suitable parent for sole custody. Jane's legal team fought to counter Tom's claims, but the evidence of her betrayal and the subsequent fallout painted a stark picture. The court proceedings were protracted, with both sides presenting their cases. However, the overwhelming evidence of Jane's infidelity and her financial misconduct significantly tilted the balance in Tom's favor. The aftermath of the divorce proceedings left Jane in a state of utter devastation. The once comfortable life she had enjoyed was now a distant memory. The fallout from Tom's legal and financial maneuvers had completely dismantled her world. First and foremost, Jane lost her lover, Richard Davis, who had been a central figure in her life. The public scandal surrounding his business had not only ended their relationship, but also tarnished her reputation by association. The shame and humiliation of the scandal were compounded by the realization that the person she had chosen over her marriage was now facing serious legal and financial troubles of his own. Financially, Jane was left with nothing. The freezing of her assets had been just the beginning. The legal division of property and Tom's aggressive pursuit in the divorce proceedings resulted in her losing the majority of their marital assets. The luxurious lifestyle she once enjoyed was now a relic of the past. Jane struggled to cope with the practicalities of her new financial reality, facing mounting bills and no means to support herself in the manner she had grown accustomed to. Socially, Jane's standing in the community suffered a severe blow. The scandal and the subsequent financial collapse eroded her social network. Friends who had once been close now distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone who had become the center of a high-profile scandal. The respect she had enjoyed was replaced with judgment and pity. Her reputation, once built on a facade of success and stability, was now marred by the public perception of betrayal and financial misconduct. Emotionally, Jane was left to grapple with the consequences of her actions. The loss of her marriage, financial security, and social standing took a profound toll on her mental health. She found herself isolated, grappling with feelings of regret, shame, and despair. The life she had envisioned for herself was in tatters, and she faced the daunting task of rebuilding from the wreckage of her choices. In the end, Jane's world crumbled under the weight of her actions. The betrayal that had sparked the chain of events had led to her losing everything she once held dear. Tom's quest for justice and retribution had come at a significant cost, leaving Jane to face the stark reality of her choices and their far-reaching consequences. With the dust of the legal and financial battles settling, Tom found himself at a crossroads. The once turbulent waters of his life had calmed, leaving him with a newfound sense of clarity and freedom. The aftermath of his tumultuous marriage and the painstaking pursuit of justice had paved the way for a fresh start, and Tom was ready to embrace the new chapter that lay ahead. The first step in Tom's journey to rebuild was focusing on his well-being. After months of stress and emotional strain, he dedicated time to self-care and rediscovery. He began attending therapy sessions, which provided him with valuable insights into his feelings and helped him process the trauma of his past. The sessions also empowered him to envision a future unburdened by the shadows of his previous relationship. Tom took the opportunity to reconnect with his passions and interests that had been sidelined during his marriage. He rekindled his love for outdoor activities, taking up hiking and cycling as regular hobbies. The natural landscapes and physical challenges offered him a sense of rejuvenation and freedom, symbolizing his renewal. In addition to pursuing personal interests, Tom began exploring new professional opportunities. He reevaluated his career goals and embarked on projects that had long been on the back burner. His renewed focus and energy led to a series of successful ventures, further boosting his confidence and financial stability. Tom leveraged his skills and connections to enter new markets and build a robust professional network, leading to a series of achievements that marked the beginning of a prosperous phase in his career. Socially, Tom reconnected with old friends and made new ones, expanding his social circle beyond the confines of his previous life. The support and camaraderie from friends provided him with a sense of belonging and joy. He engaged in community activities and social events, finding fulfillment in building relationships and creating positive experiences. Tom also embraced the freedom to travel, something he had always wanted to do, but never had the chance during his marriage. He took solo trips and adventures, exploring new cultures and places that broadened his horizons. Each journey was a testament to his newfound independence and the exciting possibilities that life still had to offer. As Tom moved forward, he maintained a healthy perspective on his past. He reflected on the lessons learned from his experiences, using them to guide his decisions and relationships in the future. The trials he had faced had shaped him into a more resilient and self-aware individual, ready to face the world with optimism and courage. In the end, Tom's new life was a celebration of freedom, renewal, and opportunity. He had navigated through the storms of betrayal and hardship to emerge stronger and more fulfilled. The new chapter was not just a continuation of his life, but a fresh start that allowed him to embrace the future with a sense of hope and excitement. The shadows of his past had faded, making way for a brighter, more promising tomorrow.